So welcome to Mahesh Tutorials. In my previous video, I was talking about this. What is Firebase? What is the need of Firebase we discussed in the last video, right? So in this video, I'll explain you the Firebase authentication part we'll discuss. If you take any application, one of the common requirement in the applications is nothing but maintaining the user credentials, like register the user and provide a login screen to the user to log into the application, correct or not? So this is a common requirement if you take any applications in the present market, right? So for provide for that requirement, like maintaining the user credentials like register screen and login screen, maintaining some user credentials, for that requirement, Firebase is providing a concept called Android authentication. Okay, we'll see what exactly this authentication. Okay, what we'll try to do is we'll create a simple login and register screen. We'll try to create. Okay, and so we'll register a user and we'll see how to log in. Okay, this login and register screens we'll discuss now. Okay, with the Android Firebase. Okay, we'll create a simple application we'll create for demonstrating about this Firebase register and Firebase login. Okay, this is my first screen. I want to create this screen. I want to create first. This is a requirement. Enter username. Want to maintain the username I want to maintain, and enter password. Enter username and enter password. And here I'm creating two buttons. I'm creating just for demonstrating the Firebase authentication, username and password, and specifying login and register. If you already have a credentials, just click on the login button. If you don't have a credentials, click on this register. Login and register. I want to maintain these details. I want to maintain in Firebase. I want to maintain these details. When user clicks the register button, store the data in Firebase authentication. And when user clicks the login button, check the user credentials are available in the Firebase database or not. Okay. So we'll get this simple application we'll create, and we'll display a toast message based on the user event, like the registered or failed registered or success. Like these kind of messages will display in a toast message will display. Okay. First we'll design this screen. We'll design first. I'm creating a project. I'm creating file, a new project. Let's take Firebase authentication test. Let's create a new project I created called Firebase authentication test. It's creating the project. We'll wait for a few minutes. Okay, so project is created. First we'll design the screen. We'll create the simple login screen. We'll create with the two text boxes, the login and register. We'll create this screen. We'll create first. Taking the main UI group as linear layout. So I don't require this ID, tools attribute, and all these attributes are not required. I'm configuring the orientation. I'm configuring as vertical is the orientation I configured. And let's create two edit text boxes. Match parent and wrap content I specified. And what is a hint I'm applying? Enter username. Let's configure the ID for this one. I configure the ID as tt1 is ID configure. Let's create one more text box, tt2. Enter password. And next, in the next row, I want to create two buttons. I want to create in the next row. And inside this linear layout, horizontal orientation, I'm creating two buttons. I'm creating. Let's take width. I'm specifying 0 dp because I'll apply the weight property. I'll apply wrap content and configure the text. What is the text you want to display? Text. One is login is the text. Let's configure the click event. On click is equals to login. Let's apply the weight property. Weight is equals to 0.5 specified, meaning 50% of the screen width I want to occupy for this button. I want to create one more button with the 50% of the screen. Register. On click is equals to register. So we created a linear layout. We created two buttons in this linear layout with 50% and 50% of the screen. Login and register. And even we configured the click event also. We configured on click is equals to login and on click is equals to register. Let's create these two methods, login and register. These two methods we'll create in the activity class we'll create. First we'll complete the UI part, we'll complete, and next we'll see that the Firebase logic we'll see. Okay. So public void, one is login is one thing, view is the input parameter. Because we configured the click event through XML, we configured. And one more thing is register, login and register. Let's get the two text boxes from the XML. In the activity on create method, let's initialize these two components. r.id.et1 and edit text 2 is equals to edit text find UID r.id.et2. Let's get the two edit text components from the XML file to your Java code. Okay. Now the UI part is done, right? We designed the user interface. We designed and we configured the events. We configured, but these two buttons we configured, the events we configured, as well as we got these two components. We got into the Java code also. We got these two components. Let's write the logic for register first. When user clicks the register button, I want to store these details. I want to store into Firebase. I want to store these details. Okay. So observe here first. If you want to work with Firebase, here you can find a tool. You can find here. Check here. There is an option called Tools. In Tools, you can find an option called Firebase. In Tools, you can find an option called Firebase. If you want to get this option, if you want to get in the tools, your Android Studio version should be more than a 2 version. Android Studio 2.0, it should be more than higher than 2.0 version. Then you can find this Firebase option. You can find in the tools. Okay. So click on this Firebase in tool section. Click on the Firebase. So at the left side, you can find a panel. You can find in the left side. Firebase Analytics, Cloud Messaging, Authentication, Real-Time Database, Storage. The different options are there. Like we want to work with the Firebase Authentication. We want to work. So let's select this Authentication, Firebase Authentication. So it is showing email and password authentication. Okay, let's select this email and password authentication and see the statement here. You can find the sign in and manage users with easy accepting emails, Google sign in, Facebook, and other login providers. So here there are some options are there, like you can enter your username and password. You can enter manually, or if you are having an account with the Facebook or Google, in Twitter or some other social networking sites, like you can use those credentials also. You can use here. Let's see first. Now we'll see in this video. I'll explain you like email and password authentication. Like we are not providing any, we are not using any other providers like Google or Facebook providers. We are not using. We'll create our own authentications like email and password will maintain. Our application will maintain. Just click on this link. What they're providing here, email and password authentication. When you click on this, it is going to it's going to create a project. Basically, we had to create a project. We had to create in the Firebase. We had to create a project for this requirement. Okay, so click on that email and authentication. If you want, you can do in the browser also. You can do this one, but I recommend this. You know, this UI support I'll take rather than doing in a browser. Okay, it's easy approach. Click on this first step. See the first step what they are providing here. Connect your app to Firebase. Click on the first one. Connect to what? Firebase. See here, I logged in my Android studio. In my studio, I already logged in with this account. I logged in, signed in as mahesh.naresh@gmail.com. With this account, I logged in the studio. I logged in Android Studio. If you're not logged in with your Gmail account, it's going to ask you to log in with the Gmail account. Log in with your Gmail account. And the second thing is nothing but these are the existing project in your Google. Choose an existing Firebase or Google project. These are the existing projects in my account. And if you want to create a new project, if you want to create, let's create a new Firebase project. I want to create a new project. I don't want to choose the existing one. I want to create a new project. I want to create. Let's take Firebase authentication test is a project name. Let's do one thing. I'm giving the project name as Firebase example because we'll see all the authentication, database, storage, and all the things we'll do in the same project. That's why I'm giving name. I'm giving as what? FB example I specified. Firebase example, meaning it is going to create a project. It will create in the Google account. It's going to create a project with the name called Firebase example. Click on this connect to Firebase. Click on connect to Firebase. When the connection is done, you're going to get, it's going to show a message connected to Firebase. Still it's in the processing, that's why it's loading still. If you want, you can do a browser also. You can do all these steps, but it's going to be a lengthy process. But here we are having a ready-made tool, right? Just click on this next. Like it's going to be very simple. The process is very simple by using this GUI tool. Yeah. So we got a message. We got connected. Your app is connected to Firebase. And see the next step. Add Firebase authentication to your app. The first step is done. Our app is connected to Firebase. It is connected. And second thing is add Firebase authentication to your app. Click on this add Firebase authentication to your app. So it is going to add you some plugins in the Gradle. When you click on this add Firebase authentication to your app, it is going to add you some plugins kind of thing. It's going to add you in your project. Click on this accept changes. It's going to add some plugins. It's going to add in our project Gradle file. Okay, it's loading still. It's in the process. See, now the second step is also done. The first step is done, connected, or app is connected to Firebase. And the second step is also done, add Firebase authentication to your app. Even the second step is also done. Before going to do the third step, like register a login, before going to write this logic, one step is remaining. That is nothing but, see, here only it's showing the message here. To use an authentication provider, you need to enable it in the Firebase console. Okay, we created database, we created Firebase project, we created, our app is connected to Firebase project, and even we added the Firebase plugins also. We added in the project, we added the Firebase plugins. But we had to enable that email and password authentication. We had to enable in the Firebase authentication because I told you, right? This authentication you can perform in different ways. You can perform like by using existing Gmail account, by using Firebase, by using Twitter, by using GitHub credentials. We can do in a different ways. We can provide this authentication. So that's why we had to choose an option here by using in which method you are following for this authentication. So click on this Firebase console. Click on the Firebase console. It's going to open that project is going to open in the browser. It will open. And log in with your Gmail credentials. And which credentials? In which credentials you create a project? Okay. We created a project called FB example, right? We created a project called Firebase example is a project we created. Let's click on this Firebase example. And in this one, see here, you can find different topics. You can find like analytics, authentication, database, hosting, storage. A lot of options are there. Now we are working for authentication, right? Click on this authentication. Click on authentication and see here, set up sign-in method. It's asking you, what is your sign-in method? You have to choose here, sign up method. Set up sign-in method. See, now everything is in a disabled state, like email and password. By using Google, you want to do that one. By using Firebase, you want to make it authentication. Like you have to choose an option here. Let's take, we want to work with the email and password authentication. We have to choose. Let's click on this. Let's click on this, and by default, it's in a disabled state. Let's click on what? Enable it first. Enable it and click on the save button. Now, email and password authentication we enable. If you want to work with the Google credentials, if you want to do that one, just click on enable this Google service. If you want to do with the Firebase authentication, if you want to do via Facebook, enable this Facebook authentication. Okay. So initially we want to see our own email and password authentication we want to check. So that's why we enable this a particular service we enable. Okay. So we did the second step. We did the second step. So clearly it is showing here. You don't have to worry about. Clearly just follow the steps. What is the steps it is providing here? Our app is connected to Firebase. And second thing is we added the Firebase authentication we added to our app. And see the third thing. Third thing is listen for authentication state. Listen for authentication state. Declare the Firebase and authentication state listener objects. So in your Java file, activity Java file, globally we had to configure these two listeners we had to configure. One is Firebase authentication. Second thing is Firebase authentication state listener. So these two variables we had to declare in our activity global variables we had to declare. One is a Firebase authentication. Second thing is what? Authentication state listener. So these two things we had to configure. Globally we had to configure these two things. It will ask you for input. Just import these two classes. One is Firebase authentication and Firebase authentication state listener. Okay. Yeah. I declared globally. I declared these two variables. I declared globally in my activity class. Next. See here. Clearly it is showing the steps. In the onCreate method, initialize the Firebase authentication instance and Firebase authentication state listener. It is asking you, boss, you declared the variable you declared, right? Globally, you declared the variables for Firebase authentication and authentication listener. These two variables, initialize these two variables in the onCreate method. Initialize these two variables in the onCreate method. Even that initialization logic also they given authentication is equals to Firebase authentication dot get instance and initialize that listener. Just copy paste, that's it. Firebase authentication is equals to new Firebase authentication dot authentication state listener. Okay. So if it is already registered, meaning whenever you make some changes, it's going to call this authentication state changed method. Just problem with the imports, we had to import all these classes we had to import. It's not null. And initialize this Firebase authentication user. Import this log class. Otherwise, I'm not using log. I want to display toast. I want to display. Let's see what this authentication state listener. Basically, when the user is registered, it's going to give that information. Or let's take first Firebase is having a feature like only one time if you register, and one time if you log in, keep on automatically it's going to take that keep me sign in support. Like every time to maintain the login credentials, to maintain every time, to give that credentials until you download the sign out. Until you download the sign out button, automatically it will maintain that login credentials, it will maintain in the application. Okay. So this listener is going to tell you whether it's already authenticated user or not authenticated user. If it is not equals to null, if user is not equals to null means the user is already registered. Okay. User is already registered, meaning else block means nothing but user is not registered. User is not registered. Okay, I'm telling here toast dot make text. I'm specifying here get application context. Second thing is message. Okay. Here I'm showing not logged in, for example. User not logged in, I'm specifying. Message I'm specifying here user not logged in. Dot show. And the third parameter is what? Length underscore long dot show. These are the three parameters in the else block I specified. Just a toast message I'm displaying in the else block. Context, I'm displaying a message user not logged in. This authentication state listener, because we're writing the logic in onCreate, we are writing this logic, right? Whenever the screen is created, at that time only it's going to call this onCreate method. So authentication state listener is going to be called if user is already registered, authenticated, then at that time it's going to call user is not equals to null. If user is equals to null means nothing but user is not logged in. Okay. If you want to check, just we'll run the application and see what you're going to get first. We need to add any internet permission also not required to add because Firebase will take care of adding those things internally. Okay. Let's run the app. We are checking the app up to this one. As per our understanding, it has to get the output as user not registered, user not logged in output. It has to display, right? Okay, displaying the I'm loading the application. Let's take we'll install this app. We'll install an emulator. Will install the app. It's loading. We'll wait for a few minutes. Up to now, what we did, just globally we created Firebase Authentication and Firebase Authentication State Listener. We initialized those two things. We initialized in the onCreate method, and the Authentication State Listener is going to be called. It's going to tell you whether user is logged in or user is not logged in. The information you will get here. So observe, it's loading the app. Okay. So still we have not registered anything, and by default it's now, as per our understanding, it has to show the message as user not logged in message. It has to display. Okay. So now let's do one thing. First, we'll write the registration logic. We'll write when user clicks the register button, it's going to call the register method will be called app is installed. Okay. When user clicks the register button, it's going to call the register method will be called. In this register method, we'll write the registration logic. We'll write. So just scroll down, and here you can find here it's showing something like override these two methods, onStart and onStop methods. we'll override these two methods. We'll override in the activity class on stop and yeah. Maybe we forgot this one, I guess. Authentication listener we have not configured. That's why this a toast message is not displayed. Okay, we'll run the application once. Because in the on create method, just we initialize the listener we initialized. Authentication listener we initialized, that's it. But we have not set that authentication listener, we have not set to our Firebase, we have not set. But now see the output. So you got a toast message, user is not logged in. User not logged in. Okay, because still we have not logged in, that's why this authentication listener is called. In this authentication listener, the else block is called. Okay. Okay, in the on start method, we had to override this on start method, we had to override. Next, in the on stop method, we had to write this logic, we had to write. What we are doing here, we are not writing any great logic, we are not writing here, just we are copying and pasting, that's it. Right? Okay. Now here, we'll write the logic for this register button. When user clicks the register button, it's going to call the register method is going to be called. In this register method, see, here you can find the notes you can find here. Sign up a new user. Sign up what? A new user. You can find the code you can find for the new user. Just copy this code, copy this entire code and place this code in the register method. Copy this code, the entire code, and place this code in the register method. Just problem with the imports, that's it. We'll import this authentication result. We'll import the task class, we'll import on completed listener. Just problem with the imports. We'll import all these classes, we'll import. My activity name is not email activity, it's a main activity. Okay, just it is showing here if you face any issues, if task is not successful, we are showing a message is as user is not registered. Okay, if task is successful, you are going to get the message as user registration has done successfully. Even you need to do this one also, because when the user registration is done, automatically it is going to call this authentication state listener is going to be called. Here what we are doing is, just if authentication is not done, then only we are showing a message as authentication is failed, we are showing. Okay, in place of this username and password, email and password we have to specify. We are going to get that one from edit text one component, will get et1 dot get text dot to string. The password you are going to get from edit text 2 component, will get the password et2 dot get text dot to string. Okay, the email address we are doing the email and password authentication. We are doing email address, will get the edit text 1 component, and password will get from edit text 2 component. We are getting the password we are getting. And just here, if the task is not successful, then only we are showing a message as authentication has failed. But if the task is successful, if task is done, meaning the authentication is done, it's going to call immediately, it is going to call this authentication state listener is going to be called. Let's take here, I'm specifying the message I'm specifying here. Let us take user logged in is the message I'm showing here. Not logged in, and here I'm showing a message as what? User is logged in message I'm showing here. And if you want, here only you can write the logic. Even it's not successful, if task is not successful, we are showing a message authentication has failed. If user registration has done, we'll show a message as authentication success. Authentication as what? Success we are showing. And if any problem with authentication, we are showing a message authentication has failed, we are showing. Okay, and remember one thing, while you are entering the password, there should be a minimum 6 characters is the password length in email and password authentication. Just run the application and check do the registration and check whether the authentication is success or fail. Okay, run the application. So user is not logged in. First of all, we have not registered. Let's take, I'm configuring my mail account. I'm configuring here mahesh.chaudhuri@gmail.com. I configure my mail account. I configured. And what is the password? I'm staying on configuring the password as, let's take Hyderabad is a password I configured. Hyderabad is a password I configured. Click on this register button. Click on this register and check what you are going to get here. It's a success or fail. Oh, maybe there is some problem with the won't run unless you update the Google Play services. You got a message as authentication has failed. Let me try with the mobile phone. I'm trying with my phone. I'm trying. I'm installing the app. I'm installing in my phone. I'm installing the app. It's loading the app in the device. So user is not logged in, and again the username and password, and click on this register. So you got a message as user logged in message we got, and authentication has what? Success. So user authentication has success, but before going to call this success, but I told you right, first this authentication listener has called first. User is logged in, and next we got authentication success we got. This is first time we got. And if you close the app and open the app, see here automatically I closed the app, I closed, and if you open the app automatically, in the app it will maintain the credentials it will maintain in the app. Once if you log it, once if you register, it will maintain the credentials, it will maintain automatically until you select the down up sign out button. See, automatically we got the message as what? User logged in automatically. Okay. Let's do one thing. I want to know which user is logged in. Let's take in the authentication listener in user logged in. Even you can find that user ID also you can find here. See in the login authentication state listener user. Let's take displaying here logged in as just I'm showing a user ID I want to show here. Just type user dot call a method called get ID is a method. Get email. So you are going to get the email address you are going to get user dot get email. Just run the application. Just run the application and restart the app. And automatically, I told you right, it's going to maintain a buffer kind of thing. It will maintain internally. The details will maintain in the cache. Automatically, it's going to load that one automatically. It's reinstalling the app. So you got logged in as mahesh.choudhury@gmail.com. Yes, we logged in with this account, we logged in. Okay. Okay, but my requirement is I don't want to do that one. Let's take when I close the app automatically, that credentials also has to be removed automatically. The credentials also has to be removed automatically. The credential has to be removed. So simple. Let's do one thing in the on stop method. You know, right? When user close the app, it's going to call the on stop method is going to be called. In this on stop method, simply write m authentication dot. There is a method called sign out is a method. Explicitly also you can do this one. Like I can create a button called sign out button. You can create when user clicks the sign out button, you can remove those credentials. You can remove simply just write m authentication dot sign out is a method. But now here just I specified in the on stop. I specified a sign out. I specified in the on stop. Run the application. Now when user close the app, it is going to remove the credentials automatically to remove. It's reloading the app. It's loading still. So you got a message as file logged in as an mahesh.choudhury. And once if you close the app, it's going to call the on stop method. In the on stop method, we return the logic for sign out. We return the logic. And again, if you select this app, open the app, right? Now you're going to get the message as user not logged in because we call the sign out, right? When you call the sign out, it's going to remove the details. It's going to remove from the cache. It is going to remove the details. Now, how to do the sign in? Now we'll see the sign in process. We'll see now. Login process. We've seen only the registration logic, and automatically once if you're registered, it's going to maintain the details in the cache. It will maintain the details and automatically it will load. But explicitly when you call the sign out method, it's going to remove the details from cache. It is going to remove the details. Okay. And explicitly, if you want to provide that login support, if you want to provide, and see here in the Firebase tool only, you can find here a sign in the existing users. Sign in the existing users. And m authentication dot, just copy this code, the whole code, and place in the login method. Place in the login method for signing. And here also same thing. Let's take if task is not successful. You don't require all these codes, unnecessary code I'm removing. Okay. Specify your activity name. My activity name is main activity dot this. If it is not successful, we are showing a message as authentication has failed. And if it is a success, automatically it's going to call the authentication listener is going to be called automatically. And here we are displaying that user ID we are displaying in a toast. You need to write the logic for this if it is authenticated, because automatically that authentication state listener is going to be called automatically. And here sign in with email and password. Let's configure the email ID and password. Let's configure here. Let's say we'll get the email ID from edit text one component. We'll get et1.getText.toString and password et2.getText.toString. Okay, so we're doing the sign in process. Just it's a ready-made method, built-in method. Sign in with email and password. Specify your username and password. That's it. Let's run the application now. Okay, we got a message as user has not logged in. The message we got. It's reloading the app. SAP is installed. We got as user is not logged in. Log in into the application. Again, the password as Hyderabad is the password again. You click on this login button. When you click on this login, observe here. So you got a message as logged in as mahesh.chaudhary@gmail.com, meaning the user credentials has what? Success. This is Firebase Authentication, a simple approach for login and register. It's a very simple approach for login and register. Okay, and we provide a sign out functionality we provided, and even if you want to check like how many users are registered, how many users are authenticated in your application, go to the Firebase console at firebase.google.com and log in with your Firebase credentials. And here, when you click on the authentication, you can find the list of users you can find here. So one user is authenticated called mahesh.chaudhary@gmail.com. Only we can see the ID, we can see, that's it. We can see only the email address you can see, but you cannot see the password of the user. You cannot see the password. Like what is the password? User's password. We cannot see that information. You cannot see. Only we can see what the user email address. Only we can see. And even if you want to enhance more thing, like for example, just select this sign in option method, sign in method, and sign in method. Next email template. There are some few options are there. Like user is going to provide his mail account. Let's take you want to provide a verification link you want to provide to the user, verify your email account. Like if you want to provide that kind of support, if you want to provide even that kind of support also, you can find in the authentication email template. Here you can find that email authentication support also you can provide here. Okay, this is about the Firebase authentication. Okay, it's very simple approach and there is no any limit. You can maintain the huge amount of user credentials you can maintain into the application. Okay, we've seen only the sign-in method of email and password sign-in method we've seen. If you are really interested, let's try to work on the Google and other approaches, other sign-in methods. So thanks for watching the video. This is about the Android Firebase authentication. And in my next video, I'll explain about the Firebase database concept. I'll explain in the next video. Thank you guys. Thank you. See you.